Imagine this. You stand alone at the edge of a crowded room. Music pulses. Laughter weaves through conversations like a seductive thread. Everyone seems connected, vibrant, wanted, seen. But you're just there. Not invisible, not ignored, but also not desired. Your presence is tolerated, maybe even acknowledged, but it isn't validated. And something in your chest tightens. Not because you're lonely, but because you're not chosen. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. You remind yourself of your goals, your discipline, your independence. But your eyes betray you. They drift, constantly searching for something. A glance, compliment, a pair of eyes that linger just a second too long. A touch that says, you are enough. You are worthy. Why? Why does a single compliment from a woman you barely know sometimes carry more weight than an entire year of your own achievements? Why does the attention of a stranger make you feel like a king, even if for a fleeting second? Why can the absence of that attention feel like death by 1,000 invisible cuts? Here's the paradox. You've been taught your entire life to be strong, self-reliant, stoic, a man who doesn't need external approval. And yet, somewhere inside, you crave her validation like a starving man craves bread. You scroll through your feed, hoping your gym progress pic gets noticed. You find yourself tailoring your humor, your confidence, your ambition, not always for purpose, but for appeal. You're not just living, you're auditioning, not just to be admired, but to be wanted. It's easy to mock this hunger, to label it as weakness, to pretend it's just horniness or low self-esteem. But that's too simple, too dismissive, because this isn't just about sex. It isn't even just about women. This is about something far more ancient, more primal, the need to be seen. But not just seen as a man, seen as enough of a man. This craving for female validation is a secret language most men understand but few dare to speak. It hides beneath casual jokes and locker room talk. It lurks behind the hustle, the grind, the late nights in the gym. It's the whisper behind your desire for success, fame, status. Maybe then, she'll notice me. But here's the cruel twist. Even when she does, it's never enough. You might think, if I just had more matches on dating apps, I'd feel better. You get them. You feel good for a day. Then it's emptiness again. You think, if I just slept with more women, I'd feel powerful. You do. And then a cold silence returns once the bodies part and the illusion fades. This isn't satisfaction. It's addiction. But unlike other addictions, it doesn't scream. It whispers, tells you you're in control. It disguises itself as motivation, ambition, charm. But deep down, there's a quiet desperation. A fear that without her validation, her smile, her attention, her approval, you are somehow less. And that's the terrifying part. Because what if you've built your entire identity not on who you are, but on how women respond to you? What if your confidence is not self-belief, but a house of cards held together by her gaze? What if the image you project, the style, the muscle, the bravado is just armor forged not for battle but for admiration? You wouldn't be alone. In fact, you'd be among the 99%. The vast majority of men live with this silent thirst. Some indulge it, some deny it, others spiritualize it, intellectualize it, or sedate it with performance. But few ever confront it. Because to confront it is to admit something most men are terrified to say. I want her to make me feel real. But why? Why her validation? Why does female approval seem to hold such sacred weight in the masculine psyche? Why does rejection from one woman sometimes hurt more than rejection from an entire world? Why is it so easy for a man to feel powerful in solitude, until he's ignored in a room full of women? And deeper still, who are you really when no one is watching, when no woman is praising, when no feminine energy is present to reflect your masculinity back at you? If that version of you feels hollow, if you feel invisible when you're not wanted, then maybe you've never met your true self at all. Maybe what you call confidence is just borrowed light. Maybe what you call success is just a mask. And maybe, just maybe, the validation you seek is the very thing keeping you from becoming the man you were meant to be. So the question becomes, can you live without her gaze? And if you can't, Is that living at all? Welcome to the hidden war inside the modern male soul. And it begins not with women, but with you. There's a strange silence that falls over a man when he's finally alone with himself. No distractions, no notifications, no audience, just him, unmasked, uncelebrated, unvalidated. And in that moment, something begins to stir, an itch beneath the surface, a creeping awareness that without the smiles, the stares, the swipes, he's not quite sure who he is. Where did this begin? Why does the masculine identity, in its most vulnerable form, seem so tethered to the feminine mirror? To understand the depths of this addiction to female validation, we must go beyond psychology. We must descend into the philosophical underworld, the basement of the human soul, where desire, fear, and identity writhe in sacred tension. Let's begin with something Carl Jung once wrote. Every man carries within him the eternal image of woman. This image is fundamentally unconscious, a collective imprint inherited from ancestral experiences. This image is what Jung called the anima, the internal feminine that lives within every man. It is the soul's mirror, the secret shape of desire, the inner muse. And the tragedy? Most men never meet their anima. Instead, they project her onto real women. In simpler terms, you meet a woman who smiles at you, praises you, desires you, and something ancient within you awakens. Not because she is who you seek, but because she represents something you lost long ago. The internal feminine you never made peace with. The feeling of being whole. But instead of turning inward, you chase it outward. You seek in her arms what was always supposed to be found in your own soul. And so begins the loop. Validation, emptiness, craving, validation again. You're not loving her. You're chasing your missing piece. And society? It only fuels the fire. From the moment a boy can walk, he is taught to earn love. Get good grades, get a pat on the head. Score a goal, receive applause. Make her laugh, feel accepted. Be charming, be impressive, be useful, then maybe you'll be loved. But what is love that depends on performance? What is identity that depends on being desired? Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." Yet in the modern world, what most men make of themselves is shaped not from within, but from outside, in the gaze of women, in the algorithm's echo chamber, in the invisible scoreboard of social approval. Here's the bitter truth. For many men, their value feels most real when it is reflected back by a woman. And this isn't just emotional, it's neurological. The male brain is biologically wired to respond to female attention with a cascade of dopamine. One compliment from an attractive woman lights up reward centers in the brain more intensely than even financial success or peer recognition. This isn't weakness, it's wiring. But here's where it becomes dangerous. What begins as natural desire mutates into psychological dependency. When a man no longer feels like a man unless a woman says he is. This is not love. This is not attraction. This is spiritual starvation. Think of the modern dating app experience. You swipe, you match, you get a hit of dopamine. You craft your bio not as a reflection of your soul, but as a performance designed to convert attention. You are not being, you are curating. Not to discover, but to impress. And in that endless performance, something quietly dies. Your selfhood. Arthur Schopenhauer once said, "A man can do what he wants, but not want what he wants." In other words, your desire is not always yours. It is shaped by the world, the culture, the system. So when you crave validation from women, ask yourself, is that desire authentic? Or was it planted? Who benefits when you are constantly distracted by the need to be seen? Who profits when your every move, purchase, and ambition is filtered through the question, will this make me more desirable to women? You think you're chasing love, but you're being sold a drug. Aldous Huxley warned us of a future not of oppression, but of pleasure. A world where people are not enslaved by force, but sedated by their own indulgence. Where truth is drowned in a sea of distractions. Where men are not warriors, but consumers of attention, validation, and soft dopamine. Does that sound familiar? This is not a moral judgment. This is not about shaming desire. This is about ownership. Because until you recognize the invisible scripts shaping your behavior, you will continue to mistake hunger for passion, addiction for love, performance for identity. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the concentration camps, wrote, "When a man cannot find meaning, he numbs himself with pleasure." Now ask yourself, are you seeking connection or just relief? Are you building love or are you escaping loneliness? Are you pursuing purpose or just chasing the next hit of approval? Because here's the most brutal truth. You could get everything you think you want, attention, beauty, intimacy, and still feel like a stranger in your own skin. Why? Because the real problem isn't her gaze. It's your absence. The absence of an identity rooted in truth, not performance. The absence of a masculine soul forged by fire, not flirtation. The absence of silence, stillness, sovereignty. Until you reclaim your inner ground, every compliment will be a drug. Every rejection, a wound. Every woman, a mirror you cannot stop staring into, hoping to see yourself. But mirrors cannot love you. Only you can do that. And until you do, the chase will never end. It doesn't happen all at once. The descent is subtle, like a man drowning in shallow water, flailing, panicking, gasping. But from the shore, he just looks like he's waving. You don't notice the consequences of validation addiction in a single moment. You notice it when you can no longer sit in a quiet room without checking your phone. When your mood for the day hinges on whether she replied with a heart emoji or just a thumbs up. When your confidence shatters because a stranger didn't smile back. That's when you know the drug has seeped into your bloodstream, and it's killing you in ways you can't name. Let's begin where it hurts most. Your identity fractures. When you rely on female validation to feel whole, your sense of self begins to fragment. You become a shapeshifter. Around one woman, you're the charming intellectual. Around another, the brooding mystery. With the next, a harmless flirt. You adjust your voice, your posture, your principles, anything to keep her attention. But here's the catch. Attention is not love. It's applause. And applause is reserved for actors. You become a performer in your own life. Always on stage. Never off script. And slowly, you lose the ability to ask yourself the most basic question. Who am I when no one is watching? That's the first consequence. You no longer live. You act. Now let's talk about relationships. You'd think someone addicted to female validation would be a romantic. But the truth is darker. His relationships are rarely built on truth. They're built on need. He doesn't enter intimacy to give. He enters to get. He wants to be desired, needed, worshipped. He wants to be the sun around which she orbits. And if she stops orbiting, he implodes. Because the relationship was never about her. It was about himself through her eyes. That's the second consequence. You don't love women. You love what they make you feel about yourself. Let that sink in. And now we venture deeper, to the silent erosion of your masculine edge. A man who needs constant affirmation becomes tame, predictable, spiritually neutered. He won't risk upsetting her. He won't take a stand she might not like. He becomes agreeable, passive, soft. Not out of peace, but out of fear. You start biting your tongue, dulling your instincts, trimming your fire just to remain likable. Nietzsche warned us of this slow decline. He said, "He who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises." But once you no longer even feel the fire of your own contempt, you become tame like a housebroken beast. That's the third consequence. You trade your wildness for approval. And then comes the deeper psychological toll. You start to internalize a warped equation. I am only worthy if I'm wanted. This cognitive distortion begins to rot your self-esteem. Every rejection becomes an existential crisis. Every compliment a brief hit of oxygen. Your emotions rise and fall like stock prices, based entirely on external market forces. You don't feel grounded in your manhood. You feel like you're renting it from her. And like all addictions, the tolerance increases. What used to satisfy you, a smile, a compliment, a night together, no longer hits the same. You crave more. You become restless. You chase novelty. You keep scrolling, swiping, flirting, not out of desire, but out of desperation. This is what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill, the tendency to return to a baseline of dissatisfaction no matter how much pleasure you pursue. The more you feed your need for validation, the hungrier it becomes. But here's the cruel twist. The more validation you crave, the less masculine you appear. Women can sense it, not consciously always, but energetically. A man who needs to be desired radiates the opposite of strength. He feels hollow, off balance, unrooted, and so the irony unfolds. The more you chase validation, the less of it you receive. Now imagine this on a societal scale. An entire generation of men shaped by female feedback loops, trained by algorithms that reward vanity, conditioned by social media to perform for likes, hearts, attention, believing that the purpose of success is to be envied, and the purpose of identity is to be adored. What happens when men stop building inner kingdoms and start building profiles? What happens when masculinity becomes a market, not a mission? We see the rise of the nice guy, not truly kind, but compliant. We see the pickup artist, not truly confident, but manipulative. We see the feminized man, not truly balanced, but broken. And through it all, we see loneliness explode, depression climb, meaning erode. Because men were not built to live in the mirror. They were built to move mountains. But the addiction keeps them small. Instead of chasing mastery, they chase attention. Instead of confronting their demons, they scroll. Instead of facing themselves, they seek escape. In her eyes, her body, her validation. And what dies in the process? Purpose, direction, fire. This is the cost of the unseen trap. You give away the throne of your mind in exchange for a kiss on the cheek. But what if the kiss fades? What if the approval is withheld? What if one day no woman looks your way? Does your value disappear? Does your soul vanish? Or do you wake up, finally, to a deeper truth, that who you are is not found in her gaze, but in the silence of your own becoming? That truth, that rebellion is coming. But before we get there, we must ask, how do you break the chain? How do you reclaim your masculinity from the machine? How do you stop performing and start being? We now arrive at the fire. The rebellion begins. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, wind whipping around you, the abyss below roaring like the fears inside your mind. Behind you, the comfortable chains of validation addiction, the applause, the fleeting smiles, the comforting masks. Before you, nothing but raw, unfiltered self. Naked truth, the unknown. Most men never dare approach this edge. They cling to the crumbling ledge of approval, terrified that stepping into the void means annihilation. But what if the void is the door? What if surrendering the addiction to female validation is the first act of true masculinity? Rebellion is not a polite conversation. It is war. A war not against women, but against the addiction that reduces you to a pale reflection of yourself. So, how does one fight this invisible war? First, understand this. You cannot negotiate with need. You must transcend it. This is not about earning less validation or seeking approval differently. It's about rewriting the entire code that defines your self-worth. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But who is that beneath the surface of craving and compulsion? You must become that man. Here is the first strike against the addiction. Cultivate radical solitude. Turn off the noise. Disengage from the screens. Sit with yourself without distraction, without escape. It will be uncomfortable. The first hours, even days, might feel like a prison sentence. But in that stillness, something fierce awakens. A voice buried under years of external validation. It whispers, "I am enough." This voice is your true self, the self you lost when you began to need validation like oxygen. Next, reclaim your narrative. The addiction thrived because you handed over your story to others. Each like, each glance, each approval rewrote your script, and you acted out their expectations. But here's the radical truth. You are the author of your life. Write your story in your own words. Nietzsche imagined the Übermensch, the overman, who creates his own values, who stands beyond the herd's opinions and desires. You, too, can rise beyond the tyranny of external approval. Start small. Choose your principles, your passions, your boundaries, not to impress her, but to honor yourself. Speak your truth without fear of losing approval. Act from conviction, not calculation. This will feel like rebellion because it is. And here's the paradox. By rejecting the need to be validated, you become magnetic. Women and people in general sense authenticity. It resonates. It hums with a deep energy that no applause can replicate. Now, let's consider the deeper shift, transforming your relationship with desire itself. The addicted man chases the image of desire, the fleeting moment when she looks at him and feels something. The liberated man does not demand desire from her. He cultivates desire from within. How? By becoming a man of purpose. Purpose is the anchor that steadies the ship when the seas rage. It's the flame that keeps you warm when the nights are cold and empty. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Man is condemned to be free." This freedom is terrifying because it means your meaning is not handed to you. It is forged in the fire of choice and responsibility. To rebel is to claim that responsibility. To find a purpose so fierce it drowns out the craving for validation. Whether that purpose is creation, mastery, service, or adventure, it matters less than the fact that it demands your full presence. When you live for your purpose, validation becomes a breeze. Because you no longer seek to fill a void with another's approval. You fill it with the work of your soul. Now, this rebellion is not about isolation or disdain for women. It is about restoration of self-respect and dignity. History offers countless examples. Consider Theodore Roosevelt, tough, unyielding, imperious in his convictions. A man who faced immense personal losses and failures but stood tall because his self-worth was never tethered to approval. Or the Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, who taught that the only opinion that truly matters is your own reasoned judgment. Or more recently, Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of a concentration camp by anchoring himself to an inner purpose beyond external circumstances. These men did not need validation because they carried a kingdom inside. The final and most crucial step in rebellion: build a circle of mirrors, not shadows. Surround yourself with people who reflect your authentic self back, not who they want you to be. Seek mentors, friends, lovers who challenge you to grow, not who flatter your ego. Remember, addiction feeds on the shadows of false reflection. Rebellion demands you seek light. A light so bright it reveals both your flaws and your fire. You will stumble. You will feel loneliness sharper than ever. But in that loneliness, you will find your voice. And that voice will be louder than any applause. The chains of validation addiction are forged by fear of rejection, fear of insignificance, fear of being unseen. Rebellion is courage. It is stepping into the fire of your own becoming. It is saying, "I am not your echo. I am my own storm." So ask yourself, are you ready to stop acting and start living? Are you ready to shatter the mirror of validation and find yourself in the shards? If so, the final truth awaits. The truth that redefines everything. Imagine a moment, sharp, still, unyielding, when all the masks fall away and you stand stripped bare before yourself. No crowds, no flashes of admiration, no whispered compliments. Just you. And the question that has haunted you from the beginning. Who am I without her validation? This moment is both terrifying and sacred. A crucible where the soul is either consumed or forged anew. Here lies the ultimate truth. Your craving for female validation was never about her. It was about your own absence. Not her love, not her gaze, but your own lack of self-love. Your own internal void waiting to be filled. This void is a black hole disguised as desire. It pulls you in, promising light but delivering only deeper darkness. You sought her approval as a lifeline, but it was a rope tied to a sinking ship. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once described desire as an endless thirst. Quench one, and another arises. This endless hunger, he said, is suffering itself. And so it is with validation addiction. You chase the ghost of approval only to find another ghost behind it. The paradox? The more you seek, the less you possess. But here, at the edge of despair, comes the liberating revelation. You have been looking for love outside what has always lived inside. Jean-Paul Sartre spoke of existence precedes essence, that you are not born with a fixed self but must create it through choices. Yet, most men unconsciously outsource this creation to the validation of others. They become actors, never authors. The final truth shatters this illusion. Your essence is not given. It is awakened. It is the silent, unshakable presence beneath the noise of craving and doubt. When you realize this, validation loses its power to bind you. Because you no longer seek a reflection to confirm your worth. You know it already. You become the flame that illuminates your own path, not the moth circling the candle. This is why so many men are trapped. They mistake validation for love, desire for worth, and approval for identity. But none of these can fill the emptiness. Only you can. This realization is not a bomb but a fire. It burns away all illusions, all dependencies, all lies you have told yourself to survive. And in that burning, something raw and real emerges. A self not defined by acceptance, but by presence. By the courage to be seen, flaws, shadows, and all. By the willingness to face rejection and still stand unbroken. This is true masculinity. Not dominance, not conquest, but sovereignty over your own soul. Viktor Frankl, in the depths of unimaginable suffering, taught that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. You are free even now. Free to reject the addiction that has ensnared you. Free to create a self that no woman can validate or invalidate. And in that freedom lies paradoxical power. When you no longer need her validation, you become infinitely more desirable. Because desire does not arise from need, but from abundance. From a man who stands complete and whole, not one who begs for crumbs of approval. Imagine walking into a room not to impress, but to express. Not to be seen, but to see. Not to receive love, but to radiate it. That man is the antithesis of addiction. He is a force of nature, calm, grounded, and irresistibly magnetic. The addiction is a prison. This freedom is a kingdom. So here you stand, on the precipice with a choice. Continue the endless chase, the hollow applause, the fleeting highs, or step into the unknown, into the naked truth of yourself? The final truth is this: you are not broken. You are not incomplete. You are whole right now. You only need to remember. This remembering is the revolution, and it begins with a simple act. Stop looking outside. Look within. Feel the pulse of your own life. Feel the strength you have ignored. Feel the man you have been waiting for. No one else can give you what you already possess. When you embrace this truth, the craving dissolves, like mist in morning sun. And with that dissolution comes peace. Peace that no approval can buy. Peace that no addiction can steal. Peace that is the birthright of every man who dares to claim his own soul. The question now is not how do I get her validation, but how do I become the man who needs no validation? Answer this, and you will have unraveled the deepest mystery of your life. Because the greatest validation is not external. It is internal. It is the quiet certainty of a man who stands fully in his own power. Alone, unshaken, unafraid, complete, and finally free.